Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Before we dive further into the interview, let me just give a very brief summary of the business. Today's listing is an Amazon Associates and display advertising business created in March 2020 in the home niche. The average monthly revenue for the business is $5,493, and it makes an average of $5,094 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are the domain, including all of the site's contents and files, and social media accounts. For everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 54923 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock the listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So that's a very brief overview of the business for sale today, and I've got the seller with me. So welcome to the show, Dom. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Let's start off by having you share with us, what is your background in building or running online businesses?
I started in 2012, basically starting from scratch. I didn't have a lot of capital, so I just learned how to build affiliate websites, how to rank them in Google, how to pick an effective niche, how to do some conversion optimizations, and basically everything that's required to start one of these businesses from scratch. Since then, I've started and sold service-based businesses. I've bought, grown, and sold affiliate websites just like this one. I've raised money, and my company Onfolio is a holding company now, which basically buys and grows a lot of online businesses. And before we shifted into a holding company, we were more like a service-based business. So essentially what we do is we help people who want to buy businesses, we run them for them after they buy them. And so we help with the due diligence and all of that. And that's what this listing actually was. So I'm not the owner of this listing, but I'm the manager. And yeah, basically my team has been running it. So it makes more sense that I do this interview than the seller.
I understand. Gotcha. Our first-time listeners, if they're not familiar with Onfolio, you are quite well known within the online business space. So that definitely makes sense with your background and where you've come from. I want to just ask you, how did you or the seller come up with the idea to start this business in particular?
Yeah, so actually one thing to clarify is we didn't start this business, we actually bought it. And so you mentioned at the beginning that it was started in March 2020. That's actually when we acquired it. But it was started, I believe, about a year before that in 2019. I don't have the data anymore on when it was started. So when I was doing the listing, I said March 2020, because that's when it started to be our property. So the history is we were looking for a business that was around 100K evaluation. And that's what this one was. We bought it off a different marketplace, mostly just because that's where the site was. There's no preference. And the reason we liked it was because it had higher quality articles than a lot of the affiliate websites in that space. While it was a narrow niche because it just focused around one or two product types, it was in a niche where there's always new product types coming out. And that's an opportunity because you can go too narrow with a niche and just get stuck. Like, okay, we've written about 10 products now, we don't have anything else to write about. Or you can go too broad. And then the problem is you can't really demonstrate expertise in anything. Whereas what this was, it was very single product focused website, but with the constant need for new content, which we saw as a little bit of an opportunity because one, you've got an opportunity to rank new content if you write it. If you cover products that other people aren't covering, either because the products have only just come out or because there's just so many new ones coming out that not all of them get covered. And two, it's just important to be able to constantly write new content for a site, otherwise it tends to die. And I believe there were some other opportunities. For example, there's usually with Amazon sites opportunity to do some conversion rate optimization. So try and improve the number of clicks and sales that the website gets without necessarily increasing the traffic. The site didn't have display advertising, so we added display ads. And it had a good SEO backlink profile, which is one of the risks. And to be honest, the quality of backlink profiles has improved in the space over the years. But like, say, 4 or 5 years ago, one of the biggest risks was, is this website ranking with PBNs or like dodgy SEO techniques that are going to result in the site dying shortly after I purchase it? And that's not so much of a risk anymore, but it's still something we look for. And this site, it met our criteria for that. So that was really all there was to it. The price was right, the website looked good, it had potential, and it wasn't too broad or too narrow. And that was kind of good enough for us, really.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. That definitely makes a lot more sense. Like you said, you acquired the business. It's actually older than it's written on our listing. It started in 2019, and the site was ranking well for a couple of those products, but it still had room to expand into other types of products and topics really within that niche. So it makes sense why you picked this up and developed it further as you have done. Can you briefly share with me, how does this make money? Because it is monetized in maybe a couple or a few different ways.
Yeah, I mean, the first is there's product reviews. So the website gets, I think, almost all of its traffic from Google. So it ranks for things like, best such and such or such and such review. And then people visit the website, they read these articles, and there's product recommendations on Amazon. And people go to Amazon, they buy that product or they buy any product, and the website receives a commission from Amazon. And then in addition to that, there are display ads on the website, which is basically just, banner ads, and they're pay per impression. So like every sort of 1,000 visitors, or actually every 1,000 views of the website might generate $10. And so if the website gets 100,000 visits a month, it might make $1,000 from advertising in addition to the Amazon commissions.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You've acquired the site last year, and you've obviously developed it to a much bigger size. So our listeners will be wondering, why are you selling the business right now instead of staying with it and growing it?
There's a couple of reasons. One is the owner of the website had a bad experience with a different website. Actually, we didn't run it, but he bought a different website and it died. And he kind of wants to recoup some of those losses by selling this one, because the sale of this one would kind of bring him more than he spent on both. So there's just a little bit of nothing wrong with the website. It's more he just wants the cash scenario. The other is we always said, well, let's sort of run it for a year and reassess. And so we've been running it for probably close to 18 months now, but obviously it takes a few months to onboard with Empire Flippers and so on. So at around a 1 year mark, I said, what do you think? And I said, well, you can sell it now if you want. It's in a good situation, or we can keep growing it. And probably because of the other reason, he said, well, let's sell it. But it's one of those scenarios where if it doesn't sell, then we will just keep running it and growing it further. So that's really it. It's just kind of that simple. Like, he wanted to buy it and then sell it a year later for more money, and sort of job done from our end.
Yeah, and as you've just explained as well, the timing probably seems about right to sort of offset the losses of the other site. So, yeah, makes sense. I wanted to ask you then just briefly about your experience of building up this site in particular. Was there anything that you found that worked as you were scaling it?
It's kind of the same stuff that works for most sites, really. You want to add more content. You want to add more links if you can, obviously quality links. It's very much a quality over quantity thing with links these days. So we didn't do a ton of link building, and we didn't add a ton of content either, but we just kind of focused on the seasonality of the niche, because it does well around Amazon Prime Day, it does well around Black Friday and Christmas. So really it was just about making sure that when those seasons approached, the products we were recommending were still in stock. So, for example, there's a website called amzwatcher.com, and you can plug your website in and it tells you if any of your Amazon links are broken. So for us, it was less about how can we scale this to the moon and more like how can we make sure that at the biggest buying periods, the website is set up to just like not miss out on sales because of the whole products on Amazon tend to go offline fairly often. And so you just get this notification from AMZ Watcher and you just change the links and stuff like that. And really, there's so many Google algorithm updates these days that you just have to make sure you're not doing anything poor quality so that the website doesn't just tank a given algorithm update. So it's less about how can we scale this as much as possible and more about how can we like not kill it, I think was our particular strategy. But I think that depends on different sellers as well. Like for us, we restricted sometimes by the website owner's budget or their responsiveness. And so we might say, hey, can we have a budget of $5,000 to grow the site? You might get approval and get the money for that 2 months later, and some people we work with are very gung-ho and responsive, and others, they're a little bit hands-off. And so really when that happens, our job is to just focus on maintaining the website. So it was a little bit of managing/growing that we really did while we held this site for the last year.
For sure, that makes sense, yeah. Was there anything that you tried, on the other hand, that kind of didn't work?
There's things we've tried on other sites that I think wouldn't work on this one. For example, we often try and create an email list and build content around informational topics. And on this niche, we didn't really see anything that suggested that that would work. So I'm not sure I would recommend that to a future buyer. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say we have a different niche about hunting backpacks or something. We might try and build an email list about hunting tips. And then people join that email list and we promote other like hunting products, like info products or high ticket products, and basically get the opportunity to sell to your website visitors over and over again, rather they just visit and go to Amazon and you never see them again. And some niches that works and some niches it doesn't. And we gave it like a cursory thought so it could actually be achievable with this website. But that was not something that we thought would work. In terms of things that we did do and didn't work, again, like we didn't actually do a lot. It's been quite a passive hold. Like, you can't just do nothing, but you can see in the P&L and the expenses and stuff, there wasn't a lot of effort put into the site over the last year.
For sure. That's actually a nice segue there, because I was actually just going to ask you, can you then describe what it looks like to maintain the business on a day-to-day or even a weekly basis?
Yeah, I think it also depends on the skill set. So you see a lot of sellers who say, oh, this business only takes 4 hours a week or whatever, or 4 hours a month. Whether that's true or not, I think what's true for them might be different for a buyer, because, I can log in and look at the comments and decide whether they're spam or whether they need to be published. Whereas a first-time buyer might not know that. I can do a lot of keyword research a lot more quickly than other people can. So I think it's hard to put a time on how much time is spent. That being said, for us, it really wasn't a lot of time. So when we first bought the site, we did an audit. So we made sure none of the links were broken, none of the pages were broken, none of the plugins were out of date. We checked the site hadn't been hacked, and we evaluated all of the content and things like that. And then on an ongoing basis, we did that kind of thing about once a month. And really, we made a plan. Okay, what content do we want to add? And then there's no in-house writers. We tend to just find a writer on Upwork and say, hey, I've got 20 articles, who can do them? But you can use content service providers, there's a ton of them out there, and just research your keywords, give it to them, and then upload the content. And then also once a month, we typically like to review the Google Analytics and look at the top 10 pages. Well, actually, it depends. Basically, any page that gets more than 1,000 page views a month, or the top 10. So it depends on what the makeup of that top 10 is. And sometimes you'll find a new article has suddenly become in the top 10 or has suddenly got a lot of traffic. So we'll look at that article and say, is there anything we can do to get more sales? Does it have a comparison table? If it doesn't, let's add one. If it does, are the products that we're recommending in the comparison table still available? Do they have good ratings? Can we extend the article? Can we add bigger buttons to get more clicks to Amazon? That kind of thing. If it's an informational article, which means Maybe if we use that hunting packs example, it might be like how to clean your hunting backpack. So we might not have any product recommendations there. We just have an article about, what kind of soap to use or something. But that article will be monetized via display ads. And if you have a longer article, typically people read and scroll further, so there's more ad impressions. So if we have an article that's doing really well, we might say, well, let's extend this article, see if we can add 500 to 1,000 words, obviously without it being fluff. And that might slightly increase the income of that particular article. And it's a small thing, but if you do it across like enough articles, then the additional dollars can add up. And that's kind of it, really. Like I said, we didn't do a ton. It's just stuff that to us is really standard, but someone listening to this may have a million questions just off what I just said. So I think it really depends on familiarity with those things.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Thanks for that breakdown. It's definitely useful to understand what goes into building a site, especially if you've just bought it for the first time as well. So I suppose to that end then, let's say if there was a potential buyer who wasn't familiar with content sites or affiliate marketing, what would you say are some of the skills that a new owner would need to be successful with this business?
SEO, content marketing, or at least like content creation, best practices for affiliate SEO content, that kind of thing. Familiarity with the Amazon Associates program. Like if you've got them, that's probably the 80-20 or maybe even like the 95-5. Yeah, I would say those are the core skills. And then beyond that, anything else is really going to make an incremental improvement to the business. If you're good at SEO and creating content, or like, supervising the creation of content, delegating it, then that's the majority of the battle won.
Yeah, that's good to hear for sure. I just want to switch over to the marketing side of things now. I'm assuming the majority of the traffic comes from organic traffic?
Yeah, like overwhelming percentages just from ranking at the top of Google.
Yeah, makes sense. What do you currently do in terms of marketing for the business?
I mean, right now, nothing apart from just making sure that the site stays afloat until a new owner comes in. And obviously, we might not find a buyer, so we don't want the business to die. But you get a lot of sellers who kind of just switch off everything when they're preparing for a sale, and then it sucks for a new buyer to come in because the business may have been coasting for 4 months. So before we started listing it, we added some new content, and we haven't done much in the way of backlink building for a while. So that's something I would prioritize a new buyer. But really, right now, it's just making sure that the site stays up and running. We did add some new content, and then we haven't done it for a few weeks, but I think actually it's a good thing to do is just going through the existing content and seeing if anything's outdated or has like broken images, that kind of like maintenance TLC type stuff.
Mm-hmm. Just following up then on that point that you made about, just backlink building, if you did stay with the business, what are some of the other opportunities to expand this business?
It depends on the budget, but let's say someone was sort of budget agnostic. I would say add more content, potentially move into some shoulder niches. So you can go broader, despite the domain name might make you think that it's a little bit narrow, but you can go broader. And so add a lot of content in sort of like parallel niches. So again, like using hunting packs as an example, you could then do like hunting knives and hunting, I don't know what else hunters have, I guess hunting weapons.
I suppose, yeah.
All the different equipment. And then you could then even go even broader and go into hiking and survival and camping. And so you can do that kind of thing with this site as well. In addition to that, I think probably could be more aggressive with some backlink building and try to, not just backlink building, like SEO in general, and try to improve the rankings of the existing rankings. Yeah, those are the real, I think, the wins. I wouldn't try and, like some people come in and like to overhaul a website, put a new theme on it and try and improve the design. And I think that's more likely to break something than improve something. So I tend to not recommend that. But if someone's done it before and seen results with it, then fair enough. But yeah, we tend to avoid anything that might rock the boat. So really, it's just about, I would just expand the scope of the site, I think is the summary of what I would do.
Yeah, no, makes sense for sure. What would you say are some of the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
Well, yeah, I mean, SEO is kind of the elephant in the room type thing. You can't ignore the risk of SEO when a website relies almost entirely on SEO. So, I mean, again, it's a white hat site. It's, I'd say, above average quality in terms of the content and the SEO. So I wouldn't do anything that can increase that risk. I would probably actually just try to diversify the traffic more. So maybe look at Pinterest, look at other social media options, and try to diversify the traffic a little bit there. But I wouldn't make that the focal point, because I think the focal point is just expanding the site, as I mentioned in the previous question.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, last few questions from me here, Dom, which is wrapping up the interview now. How much support are you willing to offer buyers?
Yeah, I think I put in the listing 30 days support, and I can do 1 or 2 calls as needed. But, it's kind of if someone emails me on day 32, I'm not going to ignore their email. So, it's kind of as much as needed, really. The kind of standard is typically after a month, people, the training wheels are off.
Gotcha. That's good to hear. Are you willing to commit to a non-compete?
Yeah, of course.
And are you open to negotiating something like an earnout?
Yeah, it depends on the terms of the earnout, and it has to make sense, because with an earnout, a lot of it's outside of our control. So it depends the reasoning behind it and what the total consideration is, the terms. But it's not an instant no. It just has to make sense.
That makes sense, for sure. Last question from me here, Don. If you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why would you say that this is a business worth buying?
Because it's kind of been coasting for a year, not coasting where it's been completely neglected and it's going to die sooner or later, but coasting in that we've been kind of doing the bare minimum to maintain it and grow it. And I think if a new person came in and was just running this business, or 1 or 2 others, and has focus, they could do a lot with it. And I think really that's all it needs to be a good acquisition.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add that you think I might have missed during the interview?
No, but I mean, if anyone has any further questions, I'm around. People can, they can submit questions through the Empire Flippers platform and set up a call with me, etc. So, if there's anything that people want further clarification on, then happy to provide that. In terms of this interview, I think we've covered the essentials.
Fantastic. Well, Dom, it's been a real pleasure having you on today's episode, and really looking forward to seeing your business get sold, or this listing get sold, in the very near future.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks a lot.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 54923. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked the listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.